Hi everyone, welcome to day 1 of the 10-day Living Yoga Challenge. I'm so excited to have you here. The first 5 days of our challenge are going to focus on the yamas, which are self-regulating behaviors laid out by Patanjali in his Yoga Sutra. So the first of the yamas that we're going to explore together is Ahimsa, which can be roughly translated as the idea of non-harming. So since this challenge is all about living our yoga off of the mat, we're going to talk a little bit about the ways in which ahimsa, that principle, can be considered and lived in daily life. And the first dimension that I want to consider is ahimsa, or non-harming, in relation to others around us. So I think the first kind of most basic obvious principle would be the idea that we are not taking any action that would cause physical harm to anyone else around us. But the concept also goes deeper than that. So in addition to not causing any physical harm to persons, we want to ensure that our attitudes, our thoughts, and our words all fall into the category of non-harming as well. So as you go through your day today, I want you to be aware of your interactions with others, whether that's with partner, children, friends, colleagues at work, kind of random people that you might come across throughout your day in different ways. And I want you to think about, what are the attitudes that you hold towards these people? I want you to think about what words do you use with people, especially when you might be feeling emotional or worked up in some way. Are your words harsh and sharp and pointed? Are the words that you use intended to wound or cause harm because maybe you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling angry, you're feeling defensive or disappointed or sad? Starting to consider ways in which we can be more thoughtful about the words that we choose to use when communicating with others, so that we can communicate clearly and accurately, but without causing harm to those around us. When we consider our thoughts as well, that's a big one in terms of non-harming, because I know I'm guilty of it. I sometimes will think things about people that I don't actually say out loud, but thoughts are powerful. And the thoughts that we hold about the people around us, they not only affect our energetic vibration, but they can also affect the energy and the vibration of other people. So we want to be careful to, if we're in a situation where someone is bothering us in some way, we want to see if we can consciously step out of negative attitude and holding negative thoughts, and come to a place at least that is more neutral, if not positive. So great ways to practice this are when, maybe someone cuts you off in traffic, or beeps at you for seemingly no reason, or someone cuts you in line or something like that. Those are all great opportunities to practice holding neutral thoughts and neutral awareness in relation to others. The next one that I'd like to consider is ahimsa in relation to animals. So many people who follow these yogic principles in their daily life choose to be vegetarian or vegan for this reason, the idea of non-harming in relation to animals. And some of you watching this video might be living a vegetarian/vegan lifestyle, and I know others of us are not, and both of those are okay. However, if you are someone who does eat, meat or seafood, I would give you a few things to consider along the lines of ahimsa. First of which would be, can you reduce the amount of meat and seafood that you're eating throughout the week? Can you try to rotate in more plant-based foods and plant-based proteins in a way that is healthy for your body? Additionally, I would ask you to consider the sourcing of meat and seafood. In my opinion, there's a very big difference between, let's say, getting beef from that comes from a factory farming type of situation versus beef that comes from a hyper-local farmer that you might be able to get to know and whose practices you can look into a little bit more deeply and transparently. So considering the sourcing or where you're purchasing meat and seafood, if you do choose to eat those items. And I think another great way to consider ahimsa towards animals is think about when you find a bug in your room or somewhere in the space that you live or work. And if you're like me, you probably have an immediate like negative reaction, like, oh, it's a giant spider or centipede or whatever it is. And typically my first instinct is to kill that insect or thing. So I'm going to invite you, if something like that happens to you today or throughout the next couple days of this challenge, can you try the catch and release strategy? That might not be possible in every scenario, but in some scenarios, you might be able to do it. So perhaps could you, get that insect, animal, whatever it is, and just kind of lovingly release it outside or somewhere out of the space that you're in. Could be another great way to practice ahimsa towards animals. The third way I want to consider ahimsa is in relation to ourselves. So of course, non-harming towards ourselves first and foremost can mean not causing any physical harm to ourselves in any way. I also think, diet and taking care of our bodies is a big part of that. So thinking about what we consume food-wise, drink-wise, substance-wise, what we consume through media, through television, through what we read, etc., making sure that everything we're taking into ourselves has a non-harming influence to it. I think also, though, going a little deeper, we want to think about non-harming in terms of our words and our thoughts. So what is it that you find yourself saying when you're talking about yourself? Do you in a social situation like talk badly or negatively about yourself? If you're like me, I'm totally guilty of using self-deprecating humor. It's something I do to make other people laugh. It's something I do sometimes to make other people feel comfortable in certain situations. And while those are, those have good intentions behind them, ultimately, again, words have power, and saying those negative things about myself, it really doesn't serve me in the end. So that could be something to consider, whether those are things that you might do unintentionally. I think also thinking about non-harming in terms of our beliefs and our thoughts. So a great example is, when we realize that we've made a mistake at some point throughout our day, what's our reaction? Do we jump on top of ourselves and get mad at ourselves and have negative self-talk and think that we're stupid or dumb or bad or whatever other things we might think about ourselves? Also considering your core beliefs about yourself. Do you believe that you are lovable, that you are worthy? Do you have beliefs that are empowering, or do you think you might be holding on to beliefs about yourself that are untrue, that are unloving, and that don't help guide you along your highest path? That would be another area to consider, whether your actions are harmful or not towards yourself. And then just, I think as a general rule, we can think about, okay, if we do run into these instances throughout our day that we do find ourselves doing harm with our words, our actions, our attitudes, our beliefs to ourselves, etc., we can try to turn that around, noticing in the moment when that's happening and stopping what we're saying and changing what we choose to say, using different words, or noticing a negative belief about ourselves as it comes up and repeating a positive mantra or affirmation. There's all ways that we can kind of disrupt those patterns of harm or negativity in the moment when they're happening and kind of flip the script on that, so to speak. The last way I'm going to invite you to think about ahimsa is in relation to Mother Earth all around us. So first would be, considering ourselves out in the environment. I think sometimes in the busyness and the hustle and bustle and go of every day, we don't really stop to consider the reverberations of our individual and collective actions on the environment. So as you get into practicing ahimsa towards the earth, it would be a great time to think about your consumption. How much do you buy? Do you buy things that are unnecessary? Do you find yourself buying a lot of plastic products when there are alternatives made out of glass or ceramic or other more sustainable materials? How wasteful do you think you are? When we create a lot of waste and a lot of garbage, that is ultimately harmful to the earth in different ways. Maybe considering how much you contribute to pollution, either individually or collectively, kind of as your town or city. etc. So there's a lot of different ways that we can think about changing our habits, changing our actions so that we are creating less harm, less stress on the earth and the environment around us. So those are just a few examples of the ways that Ahimsa can play out in everyday scenarios off of the yoga mat, and actions that we can take to try to make sure that we are behaving and approaching life in a non-harming way as much as possible. So your actions for today, there are 2 of them connected to Ahimsa. The first of which is, I challenge you today to make note of all the times that you might say something negative about yourself, think something negative about yourself, or you notice a negative belief coming up in your mind. And the reason I want you to make note of this is not so that you can later beat yourself up about it. It is because we want to start to take action towards changing those behaviors, right? Making them more loving, more self-accepting. And the first step to changing anything is to notice when it's happening. So today, try to jot down or just make some kind of notation of the times that you find yourself using harmful thoughts, words, or actions towards yourself. And then as you reflect on that, you can set an intention for how to change those behaviors, change those words, disrupt those thought patterns, use mantras and affirmations to help create a more positive, loving space around yourself. Second part of your challenge today is to choose one act of long-term sustainability and commit to it. So there are so many different ways that we can change our habits to make them more sustainable and make them less harmful towards the earth and the environment. And check out today's email for some more specific examples of how you can approach that if you're looking for ideas. So thank you guys so much for joining me for today's video. I hope you have a great rest of your day.